ball, John.
It was.
You ready?
Yep.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to WBEJ's presentation of the Coach Shawn Witten Show. I'm Stacy Street along with my partner Tony Briggs. We're in week 3. Coach Witten, let's recap the big victory for the Cyclones as you went over to the Stone Castle last week and came out victorious against the Vikings.
Oh, overall great win, total team effort. First time playing in a Stone Castle in many years. It felt good to be in a local environment. Really, great crowd, great opportunity to play Friday night football. It was awesome playing against like somewhat of an uncommon opponent that we've not prepared for in a really long time. But great Friday night football game. We competed on every snap, had to all the way to the end. Just really proud of our guys on the first 2 weeks of the season. How hard we've had to play. The effort has been amazing and outstanding. It doesn't mean there's not been some boneheaded plays, but our guys are really pushing and giving us about everything they've got.
And it seemed like you put Justice back there to run the ball a little bit, but the offense just seemed to click a little better on Friday night.
Well, we wanted to get off to a great start. Obviously, we felt that if we could get up 14 points, they're not an offense that can really explode and come back. We wanted to do that in a way where we just didn't want to turn over the ball or make some tough decisions for us. The score right before half allowed them to get some momentum. But really, for the most part, we executed on third down. Our first 2 drives, we were able to move the ball down the field. Our first 2 possessions on offense, we had the ball at midfield, which we got what we wanted with Will's kicks, and not many times we've deferred in a game, but just getting 3 plays and out, 6
Twice.
plays.
We keep counting, it's twice.
It worked out to our favor, and it's kind of the way that if you go back to the Science Hill game, what they did to us. Our first 2 series, we had to go 80 yards. That's what we did to Bristol. Made it really tough on them there, and the things we wanted to do. I think in the game Friday night we had over 20 formations. We were able to get the ball outside some. Our running game was better in the first half than it maybe was the second. But the way that we finished the game, Justice running the ball, or we had Lennox at tight end. It was just kind of all hands on deck, and it was good to really see a total team effort. To finish the game the way we needed to.
It just had a different feel from the Science Hill game. The Science Hill game, every play was just like gut-wrenching, and you never really felt like you got in the flow of the game. It felt like you did Friday night, and we would really be rolling. And then, at the end of the game, when Wes were giving us the final stats, when you look, and they had 360 yards and 5 first downs. So you had 2 plays over 50 and 1 right at 80. So let's talk about that a little bit. We talked to Zach and Justice Wallen a little earlier about that for our senior spotlight. Let's talk about, safeties running on, and you all worked on that one formation that they run all week and didn't recognize it. So let's talk about those just a little bit, because you take away those 3 plays and your defense played a really good ball game.
We did. We knew that they like to run the jet sweep. We knew that when you run the jet sweep, you get the ability to throw the ball vertical. We kind of been on our strong safeties as well when they play the backside. Tennessee High was a heavy sprint out pass team. Not much drop back other than the one specific play that they got us on. But, it's still at times our alignment is not where it needs to be. We're not really in position. And so, we got caught subbing kind of probably too late. We probably should have took a timeout right there, getting somebody on the field late. But, we just kind of reminded them of, reverses and misdirection jet sweeps. And just because they get, their best player comes in motion doesn't mean he has to get it. They counter it coming back. And that's kind of what took place there. The biggest thing that I thought was a turning point in the game was when they ran the reverse. We tackled it inside the red zone, but on that drive there, we actually stopped them on 4th down, which really could have been a big factor in the game. But just our execution to start the game was really good. We got what we wanted. CJ ran the ball really hard. We had a first play where we were going to try to go over the top. You know, we just didn't protect it, and had a false start on the first play of the game there. But, you know, just really proud of some areas in the game where we were kind of backed up. You know, throwing out of your end zone was critical for us. Scoring on the red zone, you know, not settling for field goals was big for us. You know, and then I thought one of the big plays in the game was obviously Rhett finding Justice out of the backfield. That ball was kind of supposed to go to Justin on the inside, but, you know, we've been preaching to Rhett to find your second read or third read. He did that twice on that drive, once on third down and once on the scoring drive, on the scoring play. I thought those were, you know, game-changing plays that it kind of felt like you said, there's areas where we're making the strides in the right direction, and that was really good to see by Rhett on that drive.
We talked to you about two things. I thought another critical play in the game at a critical time was on fourth down. When you had the freshman legend Pate textbook at that end position. I mean, you shuck and made the tackle, and he strung it out and did exactly what he was supposed to. And I mean, you know, you got a freshman there, one-on-one tackle on the perimeter like that was a big play for the
Well, we
Sooners.
teach, you know, total team effort. A guy's got to make the most of the opportunities. You know, Legends, obviously, his length, you know, can be a problem out there at outside linebacker. They're in a tight split there, but not allowing to get to the edge. That's a, you know, big stop by him, you know, big stop by our defense. I thought, you know, just our defense really played well all through the night of the you know, the plays that we talked about there. And then, you know, it's kind of like a corner as a feeling. Is, you know, you can go out a corner, and Jack stepped up. He had a great interception. He made some great tackles. It's kind of when you have that one hiccup where you don't make that tackle, the next series they're going to come right back at you. So, you know, credit to those guys. I thought number 19 was a really good weapon for them.
Right.
I thought he was a heads-up player. He was a tough corner. He's the one that blocked the 2 extra points that came off the edge. So, you know, that's what people don't realize as well. You know, you don't see Bristol. We've not seen Bristol in a long time, but their size was really good. The big running backs were really good. You know, playing a strong 5A opponent, you know, it showed. You know, at times, you know, we looked like the better team. We executed really well, but you know, that's a good team that's not going to go away easily.
All right, I'm going to ask this question because Tony's too scared to ask it, but you brought it up. They call it special teams for a reason. It has to be special in order to win a ball game.
Yeah.
Two blocks and the miss, and then the snap over the head.
Yeah.
What have you done this week to what you've seen on film to address those?
Well, you know, our special teams, you know, in the first 2 weeks, you know, just areas where we just got to, you know, keep improving. We've got a mix of combination guys on there, but you know, just the attention to detail in some small areas, and just really on the extra points and field goals. Those are opportunities for us with a great kicker. We've got to take advantage of. But you know, in those assets, you know, we've got our best players out there. You know, and it just comes down to, you know, focus on the details, doing their job. You know, maybe, you know, we're a little exhausted at the time and trying to take a play off. You can't do that. You know, and I think that people have seen those areas on film. They're gonna come after those. You know, those areas of concern, and we've got to be better. You know, Duff's a really good snapper. He's a really good player. You know, he's just got to do, you know, continue to get his confidence up there, and you know, we just got to be better, hands down. But you know, we had, you know, going in last week, you know, we had to reshuffle our PAT field goal team. But you know, you're talking about some of our best players. You know, McGovern's out there, Rainwater's out there, Justice is out there. You know, the bigger guys we've got, but we just got to do a good job, like we told them. You know, the film don't lie. You know, when you get it out there and you get exposed, people are going to start preparing for that. So that's an area we've got to clean up. You know, nobody works harder on special teams than we do. You know, that's an area we've always kind of tried to be an A++, but, you know, we're playing a number of guys 100+ snaps in a game. You know, those are things where we're asking some other guys to maybe step up and try to help us on those special teams areas.
Speaking of that, you know, you talk, football is, they always say it's a game of inches. It really is a game of inches when you start looking at these kids playing 100+ plays. Half a step here, a false step here, could be the difference in whether it's blocked or not blocked, whether it's a touchback, it's not a touchback, or even a run back.
Yeah, I mean, it's small areas. It's attention to detail. You know, we talk about, the three things. It's focus, it's the energy we play at, and then obviously it's the execution. It's dialing up to make sure that we can, just like you focus on third down to make the throw, to make the catch, to make the block, we got to do the same things in those areas. And, Will's obviously a dynamic kicker. He's an X factor for us. We've got him allowed to be that, and I think we've got to have a number of guys step up and do their jobs on that. That's just not like our Cyclone football teams to lack in those areas. And, we're going to do a better job of getting our best players out there on those specific things. But, punt situations happen. Justin's a really good punter. He's got has a great play by him to get the ball in the end zone and not allow him to get a touchdown. There's still areas where we feel like we have the advantage. It's just got to come all together. And then, those margins for errors, they become bigger and bigger in the bigger games, and so we got to focus on those small details and make sure those big things, don't expose us or hurt us in down the rest of the season.
All right, now let's talk a little bit about Rhett and this offensive side of the ball. We moved the ball a little bit better against Tennessee High than we did against Science Hill. It looked like you made a conscious effort where you was going to get Rhett more on the run, get him more out of the pocket to help with this younger offensive line. But he also turned and he got some scramble yards where he tried to pick up some extra yards. Was that a point of emphasis going into the game?
Well, we tried to stick to the run game a little bit better than we did at Johnson City. We tried to run it even when we didn't have the numbers maybe in the box as well. We wanted to try to get our running backs going and try to get them tighter to the line of scrimmage. I thought that Rhett did a really good job. We missed some throws still, but I thought for the most part we did a good job. Jack had some great catches. Zach, Justin, some big first down opportunities. The backs out of the backfield. We tried to get the H-backs and the full-backs out in the flat as well. So those are small areas that we're still trying to get through. The deep ball stuff is, whether you complete it or not, you got to get the defense to back up a little bit or let those corners know that they got to honor the pass. And, I thought no bigger play for us was, really third down on the first series, rolling right, hitting Justin across the middle there was a big-time throw. But, I'm going to tell you something, I don't know how many times we've thrown the ball out of the end zone, backed up, but, taking a shot, we're on the 1-inch hard line, down the field. I thought Zach had an opportunity to make that play. We come back, we hit Zach for a first down on 3rd and 12, or Jack for 3rd and 12. Those areas aren't easy, and I think that, rolling out of your end zone there and making those throws were obviously big for us. I don't know if we've even been in tougher situation than that before. We just running the ball right there wasn't really going to be a best opportunity to get it out there. And then just to be able to have those opportunities to make those plays shows us what we're capable of. When we focus on our execution. And then I thought our running backs really ran hard. I thought CJ's gave us some moments early really good. I thought Justice ran the ball hard at the end on some of the final drives there. You could kind of sense that he kind of wanted it. He wanted to be more involved there. I felt Bird did a great job of inserting and doing a great job at H-back. Legend did a good job there, when we need him to block and got to kind of get a change up. And, our third series of the game, second quarter going towards the scoreboard, we tried to get Red involved in the run game there on 2 consecutive runs. It kind of didn't work out for us there, but, that's an opportunity too, where they got to take in consideration that Red's a mobile player. He can run the ball, maybe kind of help them, settle in on the backside and not chase as fast. So, there's some small areas where we're continuing to grow, and I think those are, playing big dividends for us in that game against Tennessee High.
2 more questions. We'll close out this first segment. The first question is 4th down, last play, 7 seconds left to go in the ball game. Who come up? How did you come up with running back and throwing the ball deep, which it should have been an incomplete pass? You had already come out and celebrate the victory, and they said 1 second left. Remind me of the Texas-Nebraska game years ago. But what thought went into that is?
Well, the first thing we wanted to do, because we still had our timeouts, is we subbed Justin and Zach in. We're going to kind of get Red to pooch punt it and let it kind of roll. And then they came out from the timeout, and they actually had a returner back there. So we took our timeout. We felt that having 7 offensive linemen out on the field wasn't going to be good for us to kind of punt it. If Zach and Justin didn't make the tackle, it wasn't going to be good there. Kind of the flashbacks of Auburn returning the field goal. Alabama's got all the linemen on there. It's tough. And then, you know, a play happened maybe a decade ago was we snapped that ball to Terrence. Terrence runs around, you know, for 5 or 6 seconds and take a knee. You know, it kind of was tough there for us because where we were on the field. And then, you know, by them adding 2 or 3 more seconds to the clock, could we run around for 7 seconds? And then so, you know, Coach Jenkins, you know, came up with a good idea to kind of get ready to drop down around and obviously, you know, try to throw it as high and far as he can and kind of throw it more towards out of bounds and try to run some time off the clock. I thought Red did a phenomenal job on that, buy some time and, you know, not really give them an opportunity there, and you know, throwing away from the returner. So, you know, credit our guys for being, you know, our coaches being on their toes and coming with some opportunities there and some ideas and, you know, it's really sharp thinking by those guys, and it was really great execution there. And then, you know, we've always prepared for the last play of the game, the last play for the half. We called a rabbit drill. You know, it couldn't go on to a better person. Majority of the people would probably intercepted that. Only Justin Whitehead knocks it down because he just really kind of understands that. So just hats off to our guys and our coaches, you know, to make sure that we, you know, come away with a great execution on that. Because, you know, you put your punt team out there, anything can happen. You can get blocked, snap, or, you know, return. So, you know, just not giving them an opportunity to really run to score was, you know, credit Coach Jenkins for coming through on that.
All right, final question to end this first segment. You mentioned putting Bird H-back, putting him at a little bit of tight end. How important is it going forward that you have the ability to change formations, to change positions without changing players?
Well, I think you notice where we've had our difficulties on defense is getting lined up and adjusting formations, and I think that's the most difficult things because, you know, kids these days growing up, you know, they go against 2x2, 3x1, you know, maybe a tight end alignment, maybe a couple formations, but, you know, the ability, of course, of the game, you know, it's all about confusing. You know, maybe you don't want to confuse yourself on offense, but you're trying to confuse the defense. You're trying to, you know, get mismatches, and I think that, you know, that's where Tennessee I was able to get back in the game. You know, we talked about the one formation we got to be aware of. We didn't recognize it. We didn't get lined up on it. You know, the other formation was a bunch formation, which we've not seen Tennessee High run. But, you know, jumping into a tight bunch is a 3x1 situation, but it's a bunch situation. It's not a spread set. So, you know, the ability to confuse people in alignments, you know, that's where we believe we have an advantage. You know, you're talking about multiple H-backs, multiple running backs, receivers that can, tight ends and H-backs and running backs can line up and play wide, you know, motion in, motion out, you know, the ability to do those things, you know, Justice being a tight end and then all of a sudden line up running back, you know, what personnel do you have on the field? Is it a spread set? Is it a power set? Is it a pro set? And so, you know, getting those opportunities to get in there, you know, makes it tough. When Justice goes tight end, you know, they got to know where he's at. When he's a running back, H-back, when he's flexed out wide, you know, when he motions back in to a Rip and Liz H-back, you know, you got to account for those things. And so, you know, the ability to do that was great. You know, and then later on in the game, we went to some unbalanced sets that I really thought helped us complete that final drive. You know, moving Justin had a great, you know, a 35-yard catch, and then on the next play he gets a screen, bubble screen, gets down at about the 10-yard line. Just the ability to move those guys around becomes difficult for us, and that's the toughest thing that we've had to do defensively, Tony, is just getting lined up. And in the Science Hill game, you know, we didn't account for what we needed to, and not recognizing where we're at. And those are things, those are game-changing moments where you can, those can have some of your biggest plays.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for the first half. As that was a recap of last week's victory at the Stone Pass. When we come back after these words, we'll have tonight's preview as the Cyclones finally at home take on the West Ridge Wolves. All that to come after these words. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Coach Shawn Witten Show. Coach, you've got an uncommon regular season opponent, but it's a common opponent we play with a different style of offense that they usually don't do. Tell our listeners a little bit about what they're going to see tonight from this West Ridge.
It's like it's like playing a brand new school and a brand new team. You know, just a little bit different from what they've done in the past couple of years, maybe since they've been an established Westridge team. But it's a combination of the Sullivan County there, Justin Hilton, being from Sullivan South. It's a great matchup for us. 3 consecutive non-region games to open up the season and straight through district games. These games feel, every play we've mentioned, it's big boy football, and you don't get any bigger than that. Westridge probably comes in here 2-0.
Yep.
They play Bristol and Davy Crockett. They're a strong opponent. They got one of their better groups this year heading into the season. They're big, they're strong. They've kind of taken a look at themselves and maybe, what we did several years ago, but, you get a new style of guys that have come up through the system and they've changed offenses. They may have changed a little bit defensively for the philosophies there. And so they've gone from a spread team to, a pro style team to all of a sudden now they're back, running the flex bone, veer option, it's tough to stop. It's what you see with, Georgia Southern, Army, Navy, maybe some, sprinkle in some of the back in the old Nebraska days. It's tough, when you got good skilled guys and you're big up front, it makes it difficult to stop, and these guys, this new era of guys we've got growing up, there's not many that grow up playing football against these. It's uncommon football. It's a different style. It's a different brand, and we didn't know that, when we picked them up, several months ago, but that's part of it, and I think that, it's a great opportunity for us to be at home. It's a great preparing for a new opponent, but, I think this is another game that's got a red Sharpie circled around it. Playing Bristol, playing Crockett is great, but, it's a big football game. You got the opportunity to come into, Citizens Bank Stadium, first time they've played here. It's going to be a great atmosphere. It's going to be a great game.
You mentioned something about these kids growing up haven't seen this. As a coach, does that play into your favor a little bit because they don't have bad habits that they've seen before, or does it become that much more harder for you?
Well, one, they don't develop bad habits, but two, they don't know what they're in store for. It's the physicality, it's the mentality, it's the discipline. It's playing assignment football. And the thing about it is they can wear you down on that, and if they put to make your offense very tough too, because you don't want to give them short field, and then you don't want to give them the ball back, and then you got to capitalize on every offensive possession you have. Turnovers become critical, getting behind the chains become critical, and then anytime they get on your side of the territory, it becomes 4-down territory, for them. So you got to win on first down, which is easier said than done. They come in here where the fullback is the leading rusher. They got a sophomore QB that runs a great job. He's small. He fits the option. That's what you want. He's a tough runner as well there. And then, they've had the games go their way. It's all about, creating that momentum, creating that energy in that environment. And they've done a great job the first 2 weeks beating 2 5A opponents. And they, they have a lot of confidence as well.
The first game they played Tennessee High in the torrential downpour, they ran 59 offensive plays. They scored 30 points. They turned around and played Crockett last week. They only ran 28 plays. But the key to it is number one, Amex. He makes them go. He is the one that really pushes he's averaging about 180 yards in 2 ball games. He's the one that makes them go.
He's a special player. You can tell he's the heartbeat of the team. The team rallies around him. They believe in him. He's got something about himself that you like as a coach. He's going to give you everything he's got. He's not a big fullback. He's more of a skilled guy, but he runs really hard. He's got a passion when he runs it. He's got an energy about himself. He reminds you of those backs that we've had or played against. The more carries he gets, the better he does. If you're only going to give it to him 5 times, he's not going to be very effective. But when you average 25, 27 carries a game, when he gets it going, he's going to really get it. He's going to really do a great job. But what he has is he's got a great line up front. They've got great skill guys off that. Seems like they've got an answer for everything you want to do there. But definitely going to be a great challenge, great matchup. Probably going to be a Super Bowl type game for them tonight. Coming in here in this environment, first time playing Elizabeth, and you can believe that we're going to get their best shot.
Now, as the offensive play caller, last question before I turn to Stacy. As an offensive play caller, does their style of offense go into affecting your play calling? Is there a chance that you may be more aggressive when you know you're playing a team that, for lack of a better term, is a spread team versus one that can get the ball, next thing you know, it's 158, and we finally get our first touch in the quarter?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that go into it. I mean, I think, one, it really comes back down to our execution. Field position becomes critical. Special teams play we've talked about, but I think it becomes down to us. It's just we've got to get the ball to our guys that can make the plays for us. We've got to push the ball where it needs to go without being careless. Turnovers are really the name of the game. And that's where they've taken advantage. Is turnovers and field position. You can't allow that. And I think you got to do a great job of when you get the analytics in your favor. You got to play them, but special teams punting does a great job. You pinning those guys back, and there's a lot of things go into it. But for us, I mean, it's really just we got to do what we did last week. We've got to get the guy. Guys got to step up and make plays for us. I thought one of the biggest things that we did last week as well is we made a lot of tough catches. We crossed the middle, contested catches. The Justin makes that deep ball play. I mean, those are tough. And I think that those are where if we're making those plays, we got a great opportunity in front of us. But there's no doubt this is a big opportunity tonight. Tough team that plays with a tough mentality. And I'm sure West Ridge has had decent seasons the last couple of years. This has a chance to be a remarkable season for them. They're off to a great start, and I don't know if there's a team that comes in here to Citizens Bank Stadium that's any more confident or playing better than the West Ridge football team this 2025 season.
I can't believe I let Tony get two references to
Yeah.
Nebraska in there in this segment. Good Lord.
Take advantage.
You can call it the flex bone, you can call it the wing tee, you can call it modified wishbone. It reminds me a lot of what we used to see with Sullivan North. And Sullivan North ran it to a perfection when they were there. Talk a little bit for our listeners about this week. Not only do you have to prepare your defense, and we always talk about assignment football, but you really got to do assignment football against the flex bone. And the second thing, and I'll let you talk about both of these. Not only do you have to teach that defense, dive, pitch, quarterback every single play. But you also, on your scout team, have to teach your scout team how to run that offense. So let's talk about how difficult that's been this week.
Well, number one, that's the hardest thing is simulating in practice. I remember when I was a UT grad assistant, we played Air Force one year. I mean, that was the hardest thing to kind of simulate. You just think you got chewed out more in 1 week than you did the entire 4 years I was there. But it's very hard to simulate. It's very hard for them to trust their eyes. There's things that you do in practice that goes back. You practice without a football. You've got to. It doesn't matter who gets the ball or where the track is. You got to play your job. There's breaking and downing segments to. You got to have different calls. You got to have different ways to play it as well. And I think what they're really good at is if you can only play it one way, they'll figure out that one way how to beat it. And so, I think really, just it's a different style because there's two receivers in there. There's a different style because of the size. When Sullivan North was really good, it's because they had the people up block.
Yes.
And you have special people behind it. And I think that's what they got. Just the quarterback runs. He does a good job of getting behind the line. You can't see him. You can't see the mesh with the ball. That becomes tough. And so just, and what happens in practice and what happens in the game is you can make the right play against them, and then the very next play you can make the wrong play, if your eyes get in the wrong place. And so, we talk about the discipline. It's not punishment or those things. It's about doing the right thing on every single snap, and then that's what we have to do offensively as well. And so it becomes very difficult to simulate. It becomes very difficult. You got to keep going over the small details. You can show them the much on film as you want to. What they're not going to get from us in practice is the speed of it and how fast it's going to hit, you know, especially on some of the veer runs or the off-tackle runs, or how fast the rocket sweeps go to the outside. So, you know, that's where I think, you know, it may take a series or two for us to settle down on it. The next part is no matter how good you are on the front end, you got to be good in the second level and the third level. Our safeties got to do a great job of tackling in open space, tackling in congested areas, you know, making sure you don't overrun the ball, you know, vice versa. And then what they do also is making sure you don't fall asleep in the coverage part. You know, they come in tonight with only 3 pass attempts, but, you know, those 3 pass attempts are the ones that break you back. And so, you know, I think you talk about the Science Hill game being on the edge of your seat. You know, the coaches tonight, we're going to be on the clips of the sideline, and you know, want to get out there and do it for them. But you know, our guys have done a great job of trying to prepare. Our coaches have done a great job of trying to prepare. You know, it's really about being physical. You know, it's really about not allowing space. You know, we've tried to, you know, talk to some people that play it year in and year out and go against us really good. You get the small coaching tips and coaching points. So I think that, you know, we'll see what we can do. But ultimately tonight it's going to be another 4-quarter battle, 48 minutes, and it's going to be a tough contest.
Week 2, we've seen this, we've talked about it, we've prepared. It's a perfect week for a coach to come out and go into spread for a different offense.
Yeah.
Now, for some reason, I've had that nagging fear in my since the game ended Friday night.
You're causing long
I'm not trying to. I'm just thinking, you know, week 3 is a good time to come out and not change your offense, but to show a couple of different wrinkles, and you'll be prepared for that.
Well, I think that what they've been able to do the first 2 weeks is one, the first game they got the weather like they wanted. You know, rain, created turnovers, short field. They controlled the clock. They controlled the tempo. You know, Bristol did a good job in the first quarter. They created a turnover, got a scoop and score. They made it get difficult on at times. You can really see that Bristol was really zoned in, you know, ready to play. You know, that being the first game of the season, you know, Bristol probably had more time to prepare than maybe, you know, just going in a normal week. That helps also as well. But then I think that what our guys don't see on film, or we don't see, is the other things that they're able to do, you know, because they've not had to use them. You know, in wing T, you talk about misdirection, you've not seen that. They've not had to do that. And so they've been effective of just doing what they do. As coaches, we know, you know, the other things that come around that, you know, the wheels, the counter plays. You know, when one wing back goes in motion, you know, they can counter back and come the other way. There's all kinds of midline reads, there's trap options, there's counter options. You know, whether or not they all have that, you know, that's a part of that system that becomes tough, you know. And when you go over those things, you know, you can't just say it once, you know, you got to keep repeating yourself. So, you know, just making sure we don't tell them too much, make sure that we're being efficient on that. But, you know, hopefully tonight our length, you know, having some size and some long guys, you know, you're talking about some X factors tonight. Riley Jones becomes critical for us. Legends, length. Bird and Justice have done a great job of the inside linebackers on that. Our perimeter tackling has been good at times. You know, Zach Wallen, Justin Whitehead, you know, Jack have got to do a great job on their outside linebackers. You know, CJ's done a phenomenal job when he's gotten in. So we've got enough speed to match with it. You know, it's just, do we have enough size and physicality to close the space off? So just you know, another tough game for us. It's another uncommon opponent. You know, I know one thing for sure about our guys: we'll compete for 48 minutes. There's no doubt about that. And so maybe there's some small traits that you take from game 1 to game 2. I don't know if there's a scenario or a situation, maybe other than overtime, that hasn't taken place in those first 2 weeks. But I know this: our guys have really competed butts off, and our effort has really been phenomenal.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's the last word from Coach Shawn Witten as we get ready for tonight's big contest. We're at West Ridge Wolves. They come in to Citizens Bank Stadium. It'll be another night of hard-hitting football here, but we're at home and we're looking forward to it. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors, and Tony and I will have our keys to the game, and then kickoff at 7:30. at home, here on WB.